Well, good morning. Good morning and welcome to everyone. This is the SEA Leadership Retreat Day 2. You are some of the first people that are involved with Day 2. That is really cool. So thank you for making that effort, especially if you're West Coasters and you're up and you're going, why am I doing this at this hour? No, we really appreciate your involvement and sincerely thanks. Thanks for being involved in this event and in this session specifically. Again, my name is Leo Barron. I'm the MO and Committee Services Director, and I'm really honestly thrilled to have you with us today. This interactive session, this interactive SEA education session is titled Virtual Networking and Events, Develop, Plan, and Execute. And this session is being recorded. With me today, I am extremely fortunate to have our thought leader, Stephanie Slocum, from Engineers Rising. And Stephanie, you're only going to be able to do justice in an appropriate introduction. So please, could you do that for our people?
Yeah, happy to do that. So I am Stephanie Slocum. I am the founder of Engineers Rising, as Leo just said. My company focuses on career and leadership development for engineers. And a little bit about why I'm standing here in this session and why I agreed to do it. I work on a lot of business things. I worked on it in my own company when I worked as a structural engineer for 15 years. I've worked on it in my own company. I have run virtual events. I understand what it is how hard it is and how hard you may have been working to get people to interact and be engaged with your events, even opening your emails online. And so I want to help you be heard in the world, get more people to show up at your events. And the networking and how you approach this is a large part of that. So that's our goal with this facilitated discussion today, is to help you get the word out, get more people at your events, and really create this very, very engaged community within all the MOs.
Yeah, Stephanie, thanks. And your expertise will be most appreciated today, really, sincerely. Since this is meant to be an interactive session, so we encourage you to, feel free to turn on your webcam at any point in time, or keep it on, keep it off, depending upon how you wish, that's fine. But please stay muted so that unless you have a question or a comment live, we don't hear the FedEx delivery person or the dog barking in the background, and that's appreciated for everybody too. And Stephanie, is there any other ground rules you wish to offer before we begin?
Yes. So as part of this discussion, we do have a couple slides we'll share, and again, we want you to be very engaged. Apparently, I need another cup of coffee before I can start talking in the morning. Very engaged in our discussion. But to that end, what we want to make sure we're focused on is, for example, if you have tried things around this topic and you want to share a comment or ask a question, feel free to go ahead and do that. You can raise the hand or we'll call on you and you can unmute yourself. On the other hand, if it's something that, I heard this worked from somewhere else, I read that this might work, that's a great thing to put into the chat. We want to make sure we're sharing best practices and things that we have actually tried and worked when we unmute ourselves and talk, just to make sure everyone gets the most out of this session. The other thing I will say is that we want to make sure that we get to everyone's questions, and that everyone that wants to weigh in on a topic can. So to that end, Leo or myself may need to interrupt or redirect the conversation at points, not to be rude, just to make sure that everyone gets to have a voice and chat as needed on this really important topic of engaging all of our members.
Well put. So Stephanie, thank you. And if we're all ready, let us begin. And it would be nice if I could hit the right button. So there's the right button. There we are. So we said welcome, and sincerely, that's our true state. We're going to cover virtual versus in person. I'm going to ask that musical question and see if you folks can give us some input on that. We'll talk a little bit about planning from a, hey, where do you begin kind of standpoint, or what do you need to consider, but specifically three very specific things to consider when you're thinking about planning any kind of virtual event. We will talk about promotion because you know yourself, you put all the effort into creating something, you develop this whole program, you have this wonderful agenda, and then You tell no one, or you hide it, or it's poorly promoted, and then it misses its mark after all the effort. And finally, I'm going to share some resources with you. You're going to look at those slides and go, I can't copy all that down. No, 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 no. Please don't worry. These are things that we found that we're going to forward to all the attendees of this specific event, so they have the opportunity to read at their leisure, because these are articles and things of such, so that, again, not for you to worry about trying to, make sure you copy down every word. That's not the goal today. So again, we'll go follow this agenda to some extent, as Stephanie inferred. You want to jump in and redirect either of us, you're welcome to. Happy to have you involved live. We want to make sure that that's done. All right. So let's begin with this question. And this will require you to kind of think a little bit. And you say, excuse me, masters of the obvious, there's a big difference between virtual networking events or in-person networking events, but are they really? So if you don't mind, either in chat, if that's what you choose, because you haven't had that second cup of coffee, or live, what's the difference? What's the difference between a virtual event and an in-person event? I know this sounds so basic, but again, think about that. What is those major differences? Or are there any? Or should there be any? I think there are. I think there's major differences. But again, Stephanie, do you see anything coming in, or we have to poke them a couple more times?
Well, also,
Go ahead, Lacey.
Yeah, Lacey, please.
yeah, so there are huge differences in that when you're in person, there's groups of you. You'll stand in a group of 4 or 5, and you can see everyone's faces at once, and you can read the body language, and you can see when someone's interested and when someone's not. And when you're online, you just don't have that. And also, after a virtual meeting, it just ends. It's very abrupt. Everybody just hangs up and you're all done, and you're back in your own locale. Whereas when the meeting ends in person, you mill around and you chit chat, and we miss all of that.
Yeah, I think that's well put. How true, how true.
I would definitely say, this is Steve Troutwine. Boy, with all the virtual events we've had, you've got 3 screens in front of you, and an email pops up, and you go right to that because it's important, and you're not paying attention, and you just lose that connection with people, and you don't know when you're talking who's listening and who's responding to an email. And I think it really hinders that connection.
Yeah, well put. Well, what else? What other differences are there?
So I'm seeing in the chat just the ability to make a meaningful connection.
Yeah.
Spontaneous about who you can talk to in individual events. You can talk one-on-one. You don't feel like you're on the spot in a large group.
Sure, that's true. I think Lacey and Steve kind of hit it, very much when they kind of said, hey, I can't look you in the eye and kind of get a feel for what you're thinking or what you're saying. Yeah, if you're kind of nervous and you want to leave this discussion, you leave. But when you're caught in the screen and you're staring at a webcam, you don't have that ability. Yeah. So there is some truth to that. Absolutely true. All right. With that said, what are they saying about that? There's got to be things that are very similar to virtual or in person. What do you think? What kind of things are the things that say, well, yeah, this is no different. You're still doing this. What are those things?
You do still have an opportunity to connect with people outside of your daily, circle of contacts. And I appreciate, even though I'm not there, I see names and pictures, if not video, of people that I've met before in conferences. It's nice to have that reconnection, as well as there is content being presented here, and you still get that content pretty similar whether you're watching it on a screen or whether you're sitting in a big conference room next to people and watching it being presented on a stage. I think the content is probably not that much different.
Okay, no, Steve, I think you're right. Yeah, the content, sure. Whether it's live or over the internet or however, yeah, those would be the same slides that would be used in an in-person event. But you're absolutely right about that. I'm seeing names from literally across the country in this case of people that maybe I know, maybe I don't know. Am I scribbling some of those down? Maybe I should, maybe I'm not, right, exactly. Okay, what else is the same? Is there anything else that someone wants to comment that is the same thing when you talk about virtual or in person?
I was thinking similar to Steve about the people, is that's the one thing is sometimes you're not working with projects with certain outside groups, but here's an opportunity where you're all going to be in the same place at the same time and you don't necessarily have to coordinate it. So if you do want to reach out, you know where you're going to be and given that opportunity.
Yeah, well put, well put. I asked this question and it's not because I'm going, well, gee, you want to kill some time or you're trying to get us to talk? Yeah, both of those. No, not really. But I think the real reason is I vividly remember at the beginning of this trying time that we had maybe 55 weeks ago or so, talking to an SEA leader. And I said to them, I said, well, okay, you're gonna go virtual. Yeah, we are. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take everything that we're doing right now and we're gonna pivot and we're gonna do it virtually. And I said, no, you're not. And they looked at me like this, right through the camera. And they said, what do you mean? I says, it's different. Yes, the similar things that Steve just mentioned, that Kayla just mentioned, yes, those things are embedded in there. But the event, that whole bubble of that event is different. So if you approach it the same way, you try to promote it the same way, you try to think it through all the same way and just say, we're going to make it a virtual event. Therein lies some of the problems. I would assume you agree with that, Stephanie, that you just can't take that old-fashioned, as it were, in-person thing and turn it into a virtual by just pivot.
Absolutely not. But I want to hit quickly on two things that are the same. Why are we doing this? We are building relationships with other engineers or engineers adjacent, as I think someone just put into the chat. We're building relationships. And so starting with thinking about your event from that perspective, and that's true regardless of it, whether it's in person or virtual, focusing on why you're doing it and how what you're doing can facilitate building those relationships is critically important. The other thing we've seen is from making programs accessible. In the virtual environment, some groups are actually seeing higher participation because that person that wasn't driving multiple hours to attend your particular event, well, now they can attend virtually. So that's also a bit different.
Yeah, well put too. And you think about it, there are some of those long, narrow states or wide, narrow states. And again, were people getting in cars and driving 3 hours to come to an event? Well, guess what? Now they can do it. Click, click, boom, and they're in. Yeah, exactly. Okay, interesting. All right, I just wanted you to start thinking about this because as we go through some of the other things on that agenda, you're going to go, well, yeah, you're right. There is a different approach to and a different way of thinking on some of this. So let us begin. I love this quote. Adventure is just bad planning. I agree 100%. Who is that guy? Who is he? Why would he know about adventure versus planning? Come on. Everybody's on their phone right now. Wikipedia. Yeah, I know. Well, come on. Who is this guy? Anyone, come on, you know your history. Stephanie, anybody typing anything, or are they kind of dozing off?
Polar explorer, Jeanette.
Yes, polar explorer extraordinaire. He actually made it to the South Pole. Oh, and then the other critical feature, he made it back from the South Pole, where his colleagues or his competition, as it were, didn't quite come all the way back, if you know what I'm saying. So again, I agree with this because again, the last thing I want to do is create a virtual event that's an adventure, because if it is such, we're all in trouble at the bitter end, right? So again, is planning important? Absolutely true. And here's some of these many different things that you need to think of when you're going through that planning process. This is a combination of several different resources that I've put together to just kind of show you, where do you begin, or how do you begin, or what do you start thinking about? First on the list is, what's your purpose? Gee, That's a loaded question. Well, yeah, what are you trying to do? Is this a member service event? Is this no, we're trying to get people together to discuss this event? Or are we looking at teaching them this kind of concept? What is it? And all of those have a little bit of a different nuance to them in a way you promote them, the way you sell them, the way they look, the way, again, think about that. You have to answer. It's not just, well, it's a Zoom event and we're going to run it. No, not at all. Not at all. What will it look like? And then some of the sub bullet points, is it part of another event? Is it part of something bigger? You're going to do some virtual networking, let's say, but is it part of an open forum discussion? Is it part of a webinar that's going to end with just some Q&A session, or is it going to be a little bit more involved? Are you going to have breakout rooms? Oh my gosh, what a concept. But yeah, breakout rooms. If you have a large group, you can't get them all to be talking at the same time, right? So maybe that's an important feature where you have people broken out into separate groups, allowing them to discuss with 4 or 5 or 6 versus 50 or 60 or 70 in a room. So again, understanding all those things in advance of, putting that agenda together.
And I want to jump in here for a moment, Leo. Yes, I'm going to interrupt. I warned everybody I would. So when you're starting with events, throwing an event out there that you're not sure that your SEA wants, when I say it that way, everyone's like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. I wouldn't put together an event like that. Yet often we see groups putting together events and they haven't actually surveyed their members to see what kind of event do you want. People are very, very starved for connection right now. And sure, they also need their PDHs as well. But we've kind of seen success in the virtual event space with, nobody wants to watch videos with talking heads for 8 hours straight. I mean, think about yourself. If you're at an event and that's what it is, you're checking your email probably most of the time instead of watching the event. So really talking to your members about, hey, what kind of events do you want? And then when you're organizing them, there's some psychological reasons why you would not want to combine, for example, sharing information with a whole lot of breakout room networking discussion. Typically, you'd want to kind of separate those, even if it's just 45 minutes of talking, and then breakout rooms, that sort of thing after that. That will create more engagement for your people. But again, start with, as you're thinking through purpose, what do your organizations actually want and need when it comes to virtual events?
Absolutely true. No, how true. Time it correctly. You say, well, what does that mean? Well, we always think everything's an hour. Do you ever notice that on any Zoom meeting, it's an hour? I don't think anyone knows what 45 minutes is or 30 minutes is or 75 minutes. Everything's an hour. Okay, that's fine for that 1 hour webinar, but you're going to include some other discussion. You're going to include some breakout rooms. It takes time for people to make transitions. You want to give them a break, physically stand up and walk out, stand up and do something different possibly if it's a little bit longer. So understanding all that is so critical too. Not just saying, well, everything's going to either be 30, 60 or 90 minutes. Maybe, maybe not. How many speakers? What are you doing? How many people? How many breakout? All those kinds of things need to be considered when you say, hey, are we timing it correctly? And then the opportunity for introductions, the opportunity for a concluding thing, opportunity to conclude and then meet separately if you so choose as a post event. All these things should be considered when you're talking about putting it on the right time frame. And here's my favorite. Who is in charge? Well, they are. No, they are not. Who is in charge? AKA, the moderator. That's fine. Call them that. Call her that. Call them the person in charge. Whatever you wish.
David just said I'm in charge, Leo.
Yes.
Thank you for that, David.
There you go. There you go. But see what I'm saying? Yes, Stephanie and I are tag teaming this. We're having fun with this one because it's meant to be such a thing. But if it is a more formal event where there's a speaker and then there's a breakout and there's who is calling the shots, who is going to be saying, okay, stop, let's go. Now we're going to start. Oh, there's a problem. Let's switch speakers. Let's, who's got that control? And I think that is so important too. The next bullet point is kind of funny because it's true. We were just talking about this before everybody got in a room, Less is more, at least when regarding attendance for virtual events. Now let me play with that a little bit. We obsess over count. How many people are registered? Well, there's 100. There's 100. Well, then it's a good event. Is it? Maybe 20 interested people is more valuable than 100 people like Stephanie inferred earlier to me that are just kind of going, yeah, that's nice. I wonder who's on. What?
Right.
Oh,
I call them lurkers, right?
Lurkers.
We'd rather have 20 very engaged people in a discussion than the people who are hanging out and not really paying attention. And that's, think about any committee you've ever been on. You would rather 20 engaged people on that committee than a whole bunch of people that are just going to show up for a meeting and not do anything else.
Yeah, well put. So you see what I'm saying is that's how we look at it too. So again, this event is fantastic. You have these interested people. Oh, you should be twice the size. We promoted it. So no, you're fine. Because again, if these people go back with something and they apply it to their SEA, victory, accomplishment, absolutely. On which platform? I don't know. What do you like? What have you done? Well, let's ask that question. This is a good breakdown.
Yeah.
What's that magical platform, whether live or in chat? Tell us.
Waiting for everyone to type in that they hate Zoom. So
they will.
If you need ideas, we got Zoom, WebEx, Teams, Skype.
There you go.
I'm sure there's a lot more. We'd love to know, either unmute yourself or put into the chat, which one do you prefer and why?
There you go. I even like the why part better.
Has anybody used Verbella?
No, tell us more.
Yes,
Verbella is I haven't used it, but I've heard of somebody who has used. I think I heard it in one of these earlier webinars with NCSEA, but it's kind of like I think it's used like a video game platform. You have an avatar. You can walk around a campus. You can go in a conference room. You can go to a trade show hall. You can attend. You can go in and choose which seat you're going to sit in and see a presentation. You can go into meeting rooms. It seems like an interesting concept. It might be a little bit too gamey, but it's an interesting concept. I'd like somebody to do it and go try it out.
I've already Googled it. I'll be checking it out after.
There you go.
After our call. Okay, so I see in the chat, Zoom and Teams seems to be, we have Google Meet, we have WebEx. Yeah, we really have a wide variety of things people are using. I will share my preference and tell you why. When it comes to interaction, any platform that allows you to do breakout rooms to break into smaller groups tend to be ones I favor. I believe Teams is supposed to be doing that in an update, but it's not there yet. And for that reason, I often prefer Zoom because of, as we've seen in the chat, there were a lot of comments about we've lost spontaneous interaction in some of our virtual networking events. Often because we have to, if you're planning it, you have to be super mindful about how are we going to provide those spontaneous interactions for the people attending our events. And I found breakout rooms specifically to be one of the best ways to do that, where you can send people into 2 or 3 groups of 2 or 3 with a prompt question. And you as the moderator you can just stay in the main room and send people off, and then they come back and share. And that creates, it doesn't replace in person, but it recreates a lot of that spontaneous interaction that we're missing. Oh, and
Agree.
Brian just said Teams has breakout rooms now. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
There we go. So I didn't know that. I didn't know that. But there you go. You know, from a user standpoint, I think everybody in the entire universe has touched Zoom at least once in the last 55 weeks, you know, in some shape or form. So people are comfortable with that, he says. I'm guessing, you know, that so that, but still there's still a, you know, a gap at times, and trying to use meetings versus webinar versus yes, absolutely true. But you know, if it's meant to be easy and you really want ease, I hate to say it, the Z word is kind of seems to be ubiquitous. Look that one up. You pull out your thesaurus and look that one up. Next bullet point is sell it. And we're going to talk more about this, but boy, oh boy, oh boy, I've seen this too many times where wonderful events have been put together, and then how do you promote it? Well, you don't. Why would you want to tell anybody? You put too much effort, you're too tired after creating the whole thing to promote it. No, don't forget to do that. Stephanie will have some comment about that in the next slide, so I'll save her on that one, but she'll dig in a little deeper on this one. So hang in there, Stephanie, we got you coming. And then greet them when they come into the room. Guess what we were doing when you folks were coming in? Did you notice that? We were trying to, you know, give you a good example, but it's true. You kind of say hello to folks, and you know, see if that's a good way to check if their camera and their mic work too. But it's just another way of what would you do in a real room? As the person walked into the room, you would ignore them and let them sit in some chair, and then they put a bag over their head so you can't see who they are, and they would sit at that table all day. Of course not. Right, of course not. So again, if you recognize a name, you know who they are, and this is where having a moderator or having someone in charge is doing that. As they're, you know, as they're counting people coming in, they're able to talk to folks, and that's good. That's okay. You want to do that. And then two of the last points we have here is afterwards, you know, recognize them. That's just common sense. You always want to say thanks to the folks that help you out, thanks to the folks that attended, thanks to the folks that put it all together. You know, people love to hear their names. People love to hear, and why do you get involved in associations? I think that Mark Engel brought this up. One of the things is you want to be recognized for your efforts, because you're not paid as a volunteer, but recognition is so important. So again, recognizing people is, and then finally at post-event, why don't you just take a screen capture? Hint, hint, somebody should do this for us. Take a screen capture and say, look at what the group was doing. This was the group that was discussing things about virtual events, you know, and then post it, use it, reuse it, put it somewhere else so folks can see what the SCA has been doing. So again, this is a rough list. This is not gospel truth that, boy, if you don't do every one of these points, you're going to fail miserably, or you will succeed fantastically. This gives you a little rough outline of where do you begin. Okay. And ready, Stephanie, this is your slide. These are the 3 things you really need to consider. And if you wrote nothing down from my presentation, write down these 3 things. Stephanie, go get them.
Yeah, so these 3 things come up because as engineers or engineering adjacent, we tend to be super duper comfortable in the logistics of planning meetings and events. And then what happens sometimes is we are, to grab a just very tired cliche, but it's very true in this situation, we cannot see the forest for the trees because we're stuck in the details of what's going on. And so virtual events, so in-person events should have always been done this way, in that starting with the end in mind, that you're looking at your audience. What do you want that audience to get out of your event? However, that's for the most part not how we have been trained to do events. We sign up for events, like let's say you're giving a technical presentation, and often I'll hear someone say, well, my mission is to just like share everything I know about this particular topic on this subject. And if you try that is not kind of the right mindset to begin with. But if you try and do that in a virtual environment, it will completely fall flat, because again, there's a lot of noise out there. There's emails, there's kids coming into your home office, there's the dog barking, there's all these other things going on. And so in the virtual environment, it's not that this is any different. It's that the thing, it's accelerated, it's made worse if you aren't creating your event with the end in mind and with your audience and what do you want them to get out of this event there. And so that's where I would always start with any sort of virtual event. Don't start with what kind of virtual event are we going to put on? When are we going to do it? All those logistical details. The first brainstorming thing you should do when you're putting on any event is ask the group this question: what is the goal of our event? What do we want people to get out of it? To that end, I already mentioned this about asking your members. I talked to a lot of different both nonprofit engineering organizations like NCSEA, as well as other groups, and making assumptions about what people want is a really good way to put on an event that no one's going to show up for. So, you know, Google Forms is free. You can put together a really quick survey, send it out to your members. It doesn't take very long, and find out what people actually want to see, and then take that data and use that to decide what events you're going to put on. And finally, don't write boring emails. We're going to talk about this a little bit more momentarily. However, for now, I want you to think about, okay, if you're anything like me, you have way more emails in a day than you can possibly respond to or keep track of. Think about the emails you actually open and read. Are they missives that are newsletters with, you know, basically a thesis length email and 20 different things you can click on to go check out? Or are there people that, you know, it doesn't even matter what the subject line is in the email. If you get an email from them, you're going to immediately open and read it and respond because you know they're going to send you something valuable. I think in a lot of cases, we have been professionally trained to do this like newsletter style email when we're promoting our events. And the reality is, again, like this was already happening before the pandemic happened, in that the number of people who are even opening those emails, let alone reading them and clicking on them, was going down. But the pandemic accelerated this. We've seen a lot more unsubscribe rates. A lot of people aren't even, you know, opening your emails. And so when you're writing your emails, doing things like telling a quick story about what people will get out of this event, making your headline something interesting other than here is our SCA update for the month. Things like that go a long way towards making sure people engage with your email, which is how you're going to get them to your event.
See, email 101. I agree, right? You have that fraction of a second to get their attention sometimes, yet we write all this stuff, right? Not true, not true. All right, we did all this planning. Boy, are we planned out. We have it all figured out. Now what do we do? Well, let's see, what do we do? How about start promoting it? I think this gentleman said it best when he said, without promotion, something terrible happens. Nothing. That's absolutely true. If Mr. Barnum didn't know about it, boy, right? He wrote the book on this. How true. We just, for some reason, give up steam when it comes to that final promotion. Or, you know, maybe Stephanie, you're absolutely right. We're not used to it. You know, an engineer is not just going to sit there and expound about the wonders and make it attractive to the eye, let's say. But okay, but with that said, is there something we can do, we should at least think about as we're putting this together? Well, let's share a few thoughts.
Yeah, and before we dive into the nitty-gritty about this, I want to reframe this a little bit for people. And so I have taught marketing and sales and seller doer models and all of those things to engineers. One of the things I really struggled with the first time I went out to basically a networking meeting where the goal was to schmooze with clients, we'll put it that way. I felt like it was very, like I had to show up as like the used car salesperson kind of thing. And so for many of us, promoting things is deeply uncomfortable. We'd rather not do it. And it kind of makes us feel a little bit slimy, at least until you've been, you know, you've done it a while. I mean, it's a skill set like anything else. Here's what helped me kind of reframe this. And to do that, I'm going to tell you a very quick story. As I mentioned at the beginning, I've had my business for 3 years. It was never in my plan to start my own business. But I made a connection with someone through an organization like NCSEA at a networking event who had his own business, and he became one of my very early mentors about, you know, how you go about doing this. If I had not made that connection, I would never have started my own business. I can say that with absolute certainty, that this particular mentor, had I not met him, my career path would have been entirely different. And so as you're thinking about promotion, I would challenge you to not think about it as promotion, actually. Think about it as getting people into your events may allow them to make that one networking connection that could change their lives. It could be someone who hasn't been coming to your meetings who may end up being the president of NCSEA down the road. You don't know that. And so when you're bringing people when you're thinking about, okay, I don't want to put another post on social media, or how do I write this email to be engaging? I would challenge you to reframe your intention there in that, how can I write this or put this out there so I can reach the most people and maybe help facilitate a change in their lives that they really need at this moment in time. I see promotion as a gift. It's an act of service. And as long as you're putting together events that you really feel are serving your people, you have an obligation to let as many people know as you possibly can so that they have that extra touch point and can show up and can see that change in their own careers and businesses and lives.
Very nice. So what would you have been like?
I would probably still be working in consulting. Yeah, no, I would probably still be working in consulting. There's a story there, which I won't get into, but I didn't see entrepreneurship as a career path, which I actually find is also something a lot of engineers don't see. Happy to tell anyone who wants to know that story, but not right now.
Not right now.
Go ahead.
No, Stephanie, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So when you think of promotion, you're right. I'm using the P word, but I add an exclamation point at the end, so maybe I made it a little stronger. Let's be honest. You know, think about several of these maybe more mechanical things that you should at least do when you're doing it, and that's, you know, create an event page on your website. Why not? It's just a little one line that you just put there, and that's it. Or do you say, hey, here, this page tells you everything. Here's how you do it. Here's what we got. Here's a little video, here's a this, here, whatever it is. And now people go, oh, I could go here and I could find out about the date, the time, the place, the cost, the early bird, the late bird, the everything. Here's this, here's that. Wow, okay, it's all there. Versus having to see if they could go and find it somewhere else. We talked about email, we're beating this one into the ground. Sure, but, back to Stephanie, but, there's the big but. Don't just say, hey, write them, send them to everybody all the time, all the day, every hour of the day. Of course, as she inferred.
Not every hour of the day. People will unsubscribe.
Right.
But what I will say about email is, okay, how do you structure your emails? Your emails should only have one call to action, one in that email. So if you are promoting an event, write the email and it should have one call to action. One link to click on. When you write emails that have 10 links about here's all of our events for the next month, that causes people not to click on anything. When people see that, it basically, oh no, I have to make a decision on top of all the other decisions I need to make in my day-to-day activities. So I'm just going to ignore this email.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot. Well, I'll deal with that later, and the later never comes.
Yep.
Yeah, completely ignoring. Oh, true. You know, and then also the third bullet point is offer some kind of sneak preview of what's to come, whether that is a collection of images of that speaker, or maybe that speaker has done something before where they could share it with you, a 15-second video clip or a YouTube link or whatever it might be. So they could say, you could say, oh yeah, I remember her. She's a great presenter. Oh, that, yeah, there's a little snippet, that type of thing. Again, we mentioned it, but we'll mention it again. Leverage your social media. If you already have, you know, a Twitter presence or LinkedIn presence, use those. Don't let them sit there and not be used. Will you gain tons and tons of registrants courtesy of that? I contend no, but you know, using Stephanie's terminology, those are touch points that someone goes, oh, I didn't realize, oh, gee, I found that. I didn't, because they never read the email, but they also might have found it some other way, or someone that's not your current member might find it that way too.
Yeah. Eric in the chat just asked about newsletters. And he says, what about newsletters? They are often packed with information and well read. So first, make sure you know your numbers. When you say they are well read, what is your actual open rates? What are your click rates? How do they compare to a year ago? Now, while it's, you know, difficult to say, here's like a one size fits all, here's what you should do. Across the board, we are definitely seeing newsletters on the decline for open rates and click rates and all of those things. If you know your numbers and you see that, you know, your particular newsletter is actually getting higher, you know, getting engagement you want is getting higher numbers, no need to change what's broken. But we are, on the same token, we're also seeing that a lot of groups are struggling with, we're sending out this email with all this information and people are telling us, you know, we don't even know this event is going on, and no one's reading our emails. So if you are experiencing that problem, that's particularly where writing the email that only has one link, you know, this is for this event, sign up here, here's a reminder for this, can become particularly valuable.
No, appreciate that newsletter, because a lot of SEAs have newsletters, right?
Yeah. And Jeanette had a follow-up. So are you advocating for more single subject emails? Absolutely, yes.
There you go. Period. No questions asked. I agree. And the third from the bottom, it says, ask sponsors and partners to spread the word. How often do we forget to do that? Or again, having been involved in other associations in my past life, one of the things I always did, if I knew I was presenting at some dinner meeting, I promoted it too. I sent it out to people who I either knew in the area or knew and they had a chapter structure. So I knew in that chapter, I would then send them and say, are you coming? Are you bringing someone? Are you know, that kind of, you know, buzz, so that, again, it's coming from me now. I'm not saying, oh, I'm begging you to come and do it. No, I just want you to be there too. Are you going to be there? That kind of conversational thing. So again, you'd be amazed at how that can help. And again, you know, some of your sponsors and partners have big audiences for that region. Why not include them in something that's coming up? Request self-promotion from your speakers. That's kind of the same thing, whether you could almost combine those two. But then the last thing is the good old WOM. What's WOM marketing? Word of mouth, right? So if I personally send a note to 3 people and they send a note to 3 people and those same 3 people get 2 different notes, wow, this is something I should consider. Why am I missing this? Or why is this not on my calendar? So again, sometimes those kinds of group efforts to promote things, just because I'm telling you, or because Sally's telling you, or because Karen's telling you, that's important. Now I pay attention more than maybe that broadcast email, that type of thing. So again, these are promotional thoughts. Stephanie, anything to add or to refocus on any of that?
Yeah, I just wanted to share a couple ideas, because social media promotion seems to be something that a lot of groups are struggling with, often because the person organizing the event isn't a lover of social media or hasn't used it a ton. Definitely utilize your younger members involved to help you with social media graphics. One thing, so as a committee chair, I will send out, here's a social media graphic on this event we're doing, to like everyone on my committee, and say, can you please go post this and share it? Then it's already created for them. All they have to do is pop it up there and go. But I also know there are other folks that are not like comfortable doing that, or don't understand how to use the tools, or all of those things. Like, don't make more work for yourself. Find the younger person who's like, oh, I'm all over social media all the time, and have them do it. That will take a lot of the angst off you. To that end, and this is getting a little bit into the weeds for people that are familiar with social media, the asking sponsors and partners to spread the word, and committee members or anyone who's showing up to their event, really helps you get a lot more reach on social media. So one of my favorite things to do when I'm attending events or planning an event is post something, and then to ask people to tag a friend if they're interested in coming to this event. And what that does is that creates so many comments that you get a lot more reach. Again, if I'm talking a foreign language to you, talk to your younger members on your committees or involved in the event planning, so that they can help get you more reach on that sort of thing.
I agree. You could create a new committee chair, and that's your social media person. Maybe they'll move up the ranks, once they get involved in your, if you would say the management of your SCA or the leadership of your SCA. It's a good place to start. Right. All right. Just wrapping up now with some resources. Remember, I told you, those that came in earlier, that, oh my God, how am I going to write all this down? I can't. It's too much. Don't write. But just recently, as preparing for this, I stumbled across several different articles that I think were very valuable. One was from the Harvard Business Review, titled "How to Host a Virtual Networking Event." So it's not an association-related thing. It's the Harvard Business Review talking about it. So again, a different perspective, but something, again, I'm happy to share with everyone that attended this session. The second one was from Associations Now, which is a magazine for, guess what? People that work at associations. Yep, there's an association for everything. You're absolutely right. But this one's called Groups Explore New Networking Options for Virtual Events. It's a little high in the sky. You're going to look at this and go, we can't do that. That's ridiculous. But again, it gives you some ideas of what some of the maybe better staffed, better organized organizations have the ability to do. But understand what their concept is and how they're approaching it, I think is a valuable thing. And then the last article also from Associations Now is, keep connecting with the colleagues after a virtual event, because I don't know who brought this up at our early discussion, but after the event is done, it's done. We hit cancel, close, and it's over. Right, Stephanie? You do nothing afterwards. You don't write a single name down, or do you? Yeah, you do. Right?
Yeah, I take screenshots. That's what I usually do.
Secret weapon. I like it. And see, again, so that you have people, and then, as I've read, and I'm sure Stephanie will agree, you reach out to them on LinkedIn and say, hey, saw you at this event. You had an interesting comment. Yeah, can we have a discussion, or can I share my information with you, or that type of thing? This is how you can then encourage that kind of involvement.
The other thing you can do is, again, posting on social media. You can post, hey, I just got done with this event. If you attended, tell me what was your biggest takeaway from the event. Again, asking questions in your social media posts encourages comments. Comments and likes causes the algorithms on all the social media platforms to share your event more broadly.
I agree. There you go. So that's kind of our summary for today. We both thank you for joining us. What we'd like to do with the last 10 or so minutes, or 8 minutes basically, is to ask, are there any questions from anyone in the audience, comments, criticisms, or suggestions? Again, looking for any input that you might have, where you might say, hey, you nailed it. Boy, did you miss this? Or, hey, you know what we did? We'd love to hear right now.
And to add on to that, I would love to hear, if you've been running virtual events, share some things that have been successful, because I think the brain trust here is super, super valuable in terms of having so many leaders in the same room together to share some best practices.
I think I missed. Did you say you're going to share the slides? And if so, how do we get those?
Steve, we will take good care of you and make sure that everybody that attended this will get access to that plus the resources that we mentioned too. Yeah.
Okay,
absolutely.
thank you. This has been great. Really appreciate it.
Good to hear.
Um,
All right. Any other ideas, comments, criticisms, suggestions, things that work? We love to hear things that work. I'm sure everybody else wants to hear things.
Irina just posted a bunch of things that they've been doing in the chat. Irina, are you willing to unmute? Are you in a spot where you can unmute yourself and just share?
Yes, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, hello everyone. I am the SEAC Education Committee co-chair in Colorado, and we do always event advertisement at various levels. So I want to just share a few suggestions, and also encourage discussion what other SEIs are doing, so we can learn from others as well. The one thing is that we contacting the university professors and encouraging them to share our event flyers with students. Occasionally, like for the fall seminar, which is a paid event, we asking our board of directors to approve some student scholarships. So we invite targeted university students to attend for free, and that seemed to be pretty successful. Otherwise, we reaching to regions where SEAC doesn't have membership, since the virtual events are a little bit more accessible to them. Yeah, and then we just have kind of, pattern when we also asking our young member group or other committees to spread the word email to their membership by emailing the flyer. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
No, it's interesting that you're including the professors who then make sure that the students are aware of that. That's great. You're looking at that next generation, which is wonderful. Absolutely. Who else? Anything else?
This is Jenny Trout-Tadero at SCAOI. I just wanted to share something that developed when COVID hit and we all went virtual. SCAOI has been hosting a monthly Checking the Pulse event, which is free to anyone, including members. But it's kind of taken on different forms, and it's been nice to be able to experiment, because there's not the high expectation of a certain continuing education credit and that sort of thing. It's really what's going on right now, and more flexible in the way that it's able to respond to current events. And so it's been, I think, very successful. We've had, in some cases, discussion breakouts, in some cases, panel discussions with interaction from the audience, and it's taken on different forms. And I think because of that variety, people are interested in tuning in, and it's also free. So it's kind of drumming up a little bit more interest from people who may not have been active before in the membership. So
Hey,
I've really enjoyed it.
Can you mention the name of that event or how it's described?
Oh, sure. It's called Checking the Pulse.
Checking the Pulse.
SCAY.org. You can register. Anyone is welcome to register to tune in and participate.
Checking the Pulse. Thank you. Yeah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Anyone else? Events, things, works. It doesn't work, especially if it doesn't work. Don't do this again. Whatever you do, don't do this again. What else would you like to share?
So there's a question in the chat from Ken about, when we all go back to a new normal, how do we empower the virtual engagement, but not at the expense of the in-person audience? That is it. And basically, he says expand the audience, but not just change the way people are attending. So Ken, that is a very excellent question. And I think that I've seen people talk about how to handle this a couple of ways, but I'm actually going to share a very specific example. So I have 3 children, and we live in a school district where my middle schooler actually has classes with people who are in person and people who are virtual in the exact same class. And essentially what they're doing is live streaming all the classes, so that the people who are in person can do that, the people who are virtual can do that, There is another teacher monitoring the online stuff, the chat, if there's any questions, so students can raise their hands and ask. And I expect we are going to see some of that model, maybe not at all the events, but some of that model used in our events going forward. Other things that people are starting to think about doing is, maybe streaming parts of events, but not all of events. The question that does come up again and again is, how do you facilitate the spontaneous interactions? So making sure that the virtual stuff still has networking opportunities. I mean, the reality of this is going to continue to evolve. And so just kind of being flexible and planning as much as you can, but also we're going to see a bit of experimentation here as to what works and what doesn't. And how many people do we actually have that are, are going back to in person versus how many people, want the accessibility of the virtual events. Some of this is going to be how those numbers fall out.
Right. I guess the terminology would be the hybrid event. Yeah, that's true.
So if I can follow up on that, you had a great phrase there about the fact that it's going to evolve.
Mm-hmm.
How do we, as a profession, nurture that evolution rather than respond to what's evolving around us? I don't know that I'm satisfied with waiting for somebody else to figure it out for us.
Yeah, if I were you, I wouldn't be satisfied with that either. So if I had a crystal ball, I can share what we're seeing throughout kind of the virtual event space that I think is going to come to structural engineering, whether we like it or not. So I do believe that the hybrid model is what people are going to expect, and what's going to be here to stay, and it's not that difficult to pull off once you have like the tech pieces in place. So the advantage to doing it that way is that the virtual event, again, is accessible. So when I say accessible, I'm not just talking about the members we have now. It's accessible. It makes us more accessible to, all races, genders, minorities, people who can't travel to different spots. And so I do think that, for example, next year, or even if you're putting on events late this year where in-person is opening back up again, the whole concept of live streaming is something we should all prepare ourselves for on, even just on the tech side of doing this. So yeah, I think I don't see a scenario where, like, anyone who's on this call and thinks, oh, we're just going to go back to all in person again and the virtual is going to go away. No, that's not going to happen. So reality check there. And Ken, I'm happy to talk like more details about how you would set that up as well. But does that answer your question?
It starts to. Thank you.
Okay.
And this is the top of the hour. So the last thing I want to do is run too long, because there's going to be people wanting to go to some of the committee interactive sessions. And there's one starting right now. But before we run out the door, the rumor on the street is that Stephanie is an author. Show us that book, Stephanie.
I am an author. Yeah.
Yes, she is. And I'm telling you, if you haven't read it or you haven't bought it, you got to do both. How's that? So there you go. There's your shameless plug. But yeah, Stephanie Slocum, Engineers Rising LLC. Stephanie, thanks for your time today. I really appreciate your input. You come from a different perspective, and it's a positive one. So it's always so helpful. And everyone that hung with us to the bitter end, extra kudos for you. We appreciate your involvement. And again, this conversation can continue, but I want to make sure that the people that have to run off can do that right now. So again, everyone, thank you for your time. Thank you for your involvement. So Ken, I don't know what the magic answer is, but I tell you, I do agree that, I've been in enough of these conversations with people where they go, I can't wait till we get back to normal. And I go, define normal, because if it was what was 56 weeks ago, I don't think you're going to see that anymore. And, what we're inferring here is that this new, if you want to say basis, this new foundation of yeah, I want to be involved this way because, you know, I can't drive 3 hours to an event. I'm
Right.
still want to do it this way. Maybe you're going to keep your distant members more involved than ever before because now they have a way of doing that. You know, those
And
types
it-
of.
And I
Leo,
think-
this is, go ahead, Ken. This is Matt Wagner in the Illinois
Yes, I meant.
group. We've kind of been battling that situation because here in Illinois, it really is kind of like those that are in mid-state and south of the state. They're like, well, it's just a Chicago group.
Yep.
And we've been really battling that. And I think this virtual platform has really allowed us to engage and possibly open up membership outside of the Chicago area because they're going to be able to get the same content that those that are in person or similar content. They won't have that in-person, you know, touch, but I think that hybrid approach is really, we were playing with it before COVID, like thinking about it. And I think COVID just kind of pushed this whole thing forward about 5 years, 10 years ahead of schedule.
Sure.
And so we're really kind of looking at that. And then also, I think we as organizations, we have all these different member committees. I think we really need to kind of push and spread it out to other associations and not just offer these virtual aspects or these things to just our membership within one state. Try to provide offerings across state borders, because I know that some of our neighboring states are having problems with membership and getting content. So those of us that have maybe a little bit more resources, being able to help out those that have limited resources would be, and I don't know if the National Committee, the National Council can help out with that more. I know that we've talked about it a little bit, but I think that's going to really help everyone across the nation. So.
You're right. And, you know, people from East St. Louis, Illinois, and Peoria and Decatur, they look at it, I'm sure, as the Chicago.
Yeah, it really is. It really, oh, and I would even say the suburbs. Same thing. I mean, they don't. So I think a lot of the suburban, we're getting a lot. We have a really hard time getting membership, but just in the suburbs.
Yeah.
So it is a very very interesting thing that we were starting to try to figure out ways of doing that. I think this will help out. The other thing I think it's real nice is the Structural Engineering Foundation is doing a presentation tomorrow, and we have folks from California and Austin, Texas, providing a presentation in Illinois virtually.
Yeah.
And we're getting great attendance just because it's people that, you know, we don't have to spend the money to you know, fly people up to give an in-person presentation, where most people are just going to they just want to attend and hear all the project highlights and then walk out the door. So
Interesting.
Right.
And kind of the impetus behind my question is to get us to think about the idea that we don't have to wait for the solution to be given to us. We have the ability as a forum of 44 associations to come together and actually lead a solution that, heck, if we come up with a solution that works, you know, the medical association should use the NCSEA model, right? We shouldn't be looking for somebody else's model. We have the ability, or we should be able to have the ability to look at what we can do as a result of what we need to do. And I think that's really the power of a national structure where we bring together these types of conversations. So my question is to really kind of help prompt us to look for and create the solution rather than wait for the solution to be given to us.
Yeah, excellent point. To Matt's, I think Matt made this comment earlier, which triggered Trina. She was here earlier but had left. So for example, about collaborating across, you know, state lines. I had a presentation I gave for them back last summer, and we ended up pulling in people from Georgia and the Carolinas for that presentation. And, you know, I set it up and we went from there. But things like that, where we can do more, you know, collaborative presentations, especially virtually, where you don't have to travel.
Right.
can, really, I just want to emphasize that point, because I think, we can talk to each other more than we are, and coordinate some of that stuff. The other thing, I think, Ken, back to your point, so as a starting point, I hear universally, again, this is what I'm hearing anecdotally from talking to people all across the country, is that, again, this spontaneous connection, like, everyone feels disconnected. It's fueling the stress and burnout epidemic that was already happening before the pandemic. But this connection issue, like, where I would start here is talking to your members about, can we put on more social events, facilitated discussions related to happy hours, where people can actually, connect one-on-one with each other in a deeper way. Again, I'm hearing that from pretty much everyone at every career level. I've often found it, we've set up mentoring sessions, we've set up facilitated discussions on X topic, whatever that looks like. But that is, if you're saying, okay, what can I do right now? That is where I would start.
Right. Thank you.
Well, we're 9 minutes over, but it doesn't look like you want to leave. See, y'all want to hang out.
Yeah, I'm happy to stay as long as folks have questions.
Stephanie, this is Matt again. I was just wondering, have you, to facilitate some of those one-on-one conversations, has anyone done like a virtual speed dating type of format? I know that the Chicago branch of the Certified Specification Institute, CSI, they actually do, they've kind of started this, they were doing it before COVID, and I'm just curious, I think it might apply really well to a virtual aspect where you set up, I don't know how you can facilitate it, but basically introductions, one-on-one introductions, let people talk for 10 minutes or 5 minutes, and then you move on to the next. I don't know if there's a platform out there with random generation, or I don't know.
Yeah, let me answer that question, and then Irina, I see your hand is raised. We'll get to you next. So I will share. So this is actually, I'm on the committee for the virtual SEI event, and I will share how we have something like that set up, because we actually have a mentoring, and Emily is in that event, so she can comment on that. We actually have set up basically a mentoring speed dating. It's not one-on-one, but it's topics. So we have, each of our leaders has a topic. They're going to introduce the topic, and then we're going to send them all to different breakout rooms. So for example, we could have one on mentoring, one on networking, one on, academic career paths, instructional engineering, all those things. And then all the attendees can pick where they want to go and go to those individual rooms to have discussions on that topic. You could do something similar with like the one-on-one thing. Usually when I've done the quote unquote speed mentoring in person, it has been at that table format. And so essentially we're recreating that, and we are using Zoom to do it, recreating that same format for that event. Now, I haven't run the event yet, so we'll see how it goes, but I've used Zoom often enough that I don't anticipate any issues.
Interesting.
Matt, does that answer? Do you have follow-ups on that?
Oh, no, that sorry, I didn't unmute. Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for coming, Ed. Enjoy the rest of the day. He said he had to sign off. Irina, can you go ahead and unmute yourself?
Yeah, it's at a little bit different level. It's about our education committee members. We would like to grow the committee, but it seems currently when our organization is gaining new members, the process is not fully functional to figure out, okay, which member wants to go to which committee, and then kind of make the flow really successful. So we haven't seen each other like for a year approximately. So we start thinking a little bit out of the box, how we can engage, a little bit more member. And I think people start missing the in-person, connection. So we came up to make our next May committee meeting in person. So we will meet on Friday after hours. Normally we meeting on Friday in the morning via WebEx, and try to make it like 30-minute meeting. Try to distribute our flyer for our committee meeting and invite, pretty much send it to our organization, see who would be interested in our committee, and do it outdoor. And also combine it like with a little hike afterwards, so that somewhere where we can still keep the distancing, you know, and have it safe, but do it a little bit more personal, and we will see, you know, what the outcome will be from it. So I didn't know if somebody else is thinking, you know, doing some meetings in person, which would be kind of social, kind of have the direct connection, you know, between the attendees.
Got it. Yeah, I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on that. But first, Irina, like, kudos to you for thinking really creatively out of the box about, okay, how can we create more interaction? Like, I think we just generally need, to Ken's point, we generally need more creativity around this. I can't tell you how many people I have heard just say, oh, well, we're canceling all of our meetings until we can go back to in person. Like, I've talked to a lot of engineers who are still in that spot. I see proposals coming in for groups. I sit on the SEI Board of Governors, and I see proposals coming in that they're like, all of our stuff is in person. We can't do anything virtually. That attitude is still really, really prevalent. So I just want to say, like, kudos to you for escaping that and being like, we're going to figure out how we might be able to solve this, instead of just saying, you know, well, we're just going to wait.
Yeah,
so that's
because
awesome.
yeah, we kind of trying, you know, put our advertisements into the newsletters, and there are just no hands. And that was not successful even when meetings were in person, you know. So just trying to see, well, what we can do differently, you know, to get people's interest, and see if that will work out, you know. Maybe it won't, but we don't know unless we try it.
Right. Yeah. And that also goes to how much a personal connection makes a difference.
Exactly.
You know,
That's
sending
the
out
test.
mass emails isn't what gets people to events usually. It's that, you know, reach out from a friend that says, hey, I'm going to this. Are you going to this? What, you know, it's that sort of thing that gets people showing up for stuff.
So I'm going to be mean and terrible at this point and say we gotta bail because we only have 2 Zoom accounts. So this one has to be reset for the next event. You know, otherwise I will be yelled at by our organizers, Catherine and Susan, and they'll throw me out of the room. So anyway,
Okay.
Again, appreciate everybody's time and being involved to this point. And Stephanie, thank you.
Yeah.
Stephanie, Leo, thank you. Rest of the NCSEA team.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.